You've entered Bookstorm. Your favorite authors are here to dive down deep into their best-selling books. Stay tuned to brave the storm.
Well, welcome back, Bookstorm Podcast listeners. We are just thrilled that you're here. We've got you all over the world in 96 countries and territories in all 50 states. And we know why you're here because we have fantastic authors like the one that we've got today. We are just thrilled to welcome #1 New York Times bestselling author, Robert Crais. Thank you so much, Robert, for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
I'd like to tell our listeners just a little bit about your background, even though many have been reading your books for many years and enjoying them. But you are a Louisiana native and you kind of got your start writing in the mid 70s in Hollywood. In fact, you were writing on some of my favorite shows of all time. I'm going to give away my age. Hill Street Blues, for which you received an Emmy nomination, Cagney and Lacey, Miami Vice. You've had an NBC miniseries, Cross of Fire, about the Ku Klux Klan's rise to prominence in the 20s. And in the 80s, you started writing novels. I love the first Elvis Cole novel is called Monkey's Raincoat. It won the Anthony and McCavity Awards and was nominated for the Edgar Award, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
And I also want to tell our listeners, though, you've got standalone thrillers as well, and they're wonderful. Demolition Angel, Hostage, which became a movie starring Bruce Willis. And you have, of course, been writing these wonderful stories that feature Elvis Cole. And now we have Joe Pike, who has also joined in that series. And that's one of the books that we're here to talk about today. I'm going to hold this up because The Big Empty has an awesome cover. What number is this in this series, Robert?
Number 20 in the series. It's sort of like, I think of it as Elvis's birthday, 20. He's 20 years old now. Actually, he's older than that, but, you get the drift.
I love it. You have gotten all kinds of literary awards and nominations, and you were named the Grand Master by the Mystery Writers of America in 2014, which I think is pretty cool. You live in the Santa Monica Mountains with your wife, your cats, and many thousands of books, and we're just thrilled that you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
So without spoiling anything, we'll give a little summary of the book that we are reading, The Big Empty. In this story, Elvis Cole and his partner, Joe Pike, meet Tracy Beller. She was 13 when her father disappeared in the sleepy town of Rancha, not far from Los Angeles. The evidence says Tommy Beller abandoned his family, but Tracy never believed it. Now, 10 years later, Tracy is a high-profile influencer with millions of followers and the money to hire the best detective she can find, Elvis Cole. Elvis heads to Rancha, where an ex-con named Sadie Givens and her daughter Anya might have a line on the missing man. But when Elvis finds himself shadowed by a gang of vicious criminals, the missing persons cold case becomes far more sinister. It goes deeper than he could have imagined, and now more lives are on the line. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that summary?
Well, no, you did a great job. That about sums it up. See ya. We'll talk soon. No, I circled. I circled the notion for this book for a long time, and this is the first time this has happened in any of the 20 books. I mean, none of them are easy, but typically the way I work is I'll get a concept for a book, and I kind of immediately see it. I mean, I have to do a lot of work, of course, creating characters and figuring things out. I'm a big outliner. I figure things out beforehand. But what you hold, the book you now hold in your hand, it took several years of kind of developing. I had notions for a particular book I wanted to do. And the overriding one at its bare bones was that I wanted to put Elvis Cole in what would be for him an absolutely untenable position. I mean, Kristen, if you've been reading the books and Monkey's Raincoat on every one of the books, I mean, Elvis has a very strong personal code of justice and of what's right and wrong. And when he takes a client's case, I think he invests himself in that client. He takes the case, and he only takes cases that he really believes in, where he wants to help the person who's come to him. He wants to protect that client. He wants to help that client get to wherever he or she needs to be. And knowing his personal code, I wanted to put him in a place where that code was tested, where he would be trapped in a reality where there was no good choice for him. Could he continue to protect and save the client that he cared for? Would he have to, in some way, break his trust with that client? In other words, I wanted to torture my main character, and that's what I think I did with this book. But maybe because that was the role I put in store, I put him in store of, or in store of him, or something like that. I'm not very good with words. A lot of people are commenting, reviewers, about the depths of this particular book, and they're saying again and again, it may be my most powerful book. And probably that's why, because Elvis is tested in that way.
Yeah, I love it. You're operating, and he was operating in the gray area on so many moral issues. I thought that was fantastic the way you put it, and you have a beautiful way with words. And that makes me laugh when you say that.
I just don't speak very well. Maybe I can write okay, but you know.
So that was his moral compass was something that I noticed and picked up on in writing, because I think in his and in Joe's role as investigators, they're constantly balancing stealth and whether or not they have to lie, and the trust of their clients. And they have to maintain these relationships to even get to this idea of justice. Did you, what's the word, model Elvis's moral compass after your own, or did you kind of give him a completely different character where you may have not made the same decisions that he did?
Well, of course, I am not Elvis Cole or Joe Pike. I might wish to be, but I'm not. But I do think they have, if not my moral compass, then I aspire to have their moral compass. I'm a big believer in personal right and wrong. But I should say, Elvis is not a police officer. He doesn't build cases that have to stand up in court and follow the rules as set down by black letter law, the way a police officer has to do. And from that viewpoint, Elvis, he breaks the law all the time. He breaks into people's businesses and their homes looking for evidence, and these things are things that a police officer cannot do. Elvis does. Does he think twice about it or feel guilty about it? No and no, because he does these things to try to help the client who's come to him, and he believes there's a higher moral right to his doing that. And again, that's what makes his frame, I think, is therefore rigid. He invests himself I love that word. He invests himself in the client. Like in this book, as you said, Tracy Beller comes to him. She's this successful young woman, an influencer. He personally likes her. She has this girl next door, the kind of quality like everybody wants to be Tracy's best friend. The moment you meet her, you like her. And he likes her too. Despite her success, there's innocence is probably not the right word, but it's something in that direction. There's a a plainness and a goodness. And goodness is, there's a goodness in her that he responds to. But when he comes to her, when she comes to him, it's because, you know, Dad disappeared, and the cops and other private eyes have all said Dad just split. It's called a voluntary absence, right? I mean, that's actually the technical term. Most of the time when people vanish, predominantly men, but women too, most of the time when they vanish, they simply go, right? They don't say goodbye. They don't leave a note. They just walk out the door and keep driving. And that's what Tracy's been told, but she doesn't believe that. You know, she adored her father, and he was a great dad. Of her two parents, he's the one who taught her to bake. You know, when she was 4 or 5 years old, they baked together, and she grew up baking with Dad. That's just what they did together. And when she started making videos about that when she was like 14, 15 years old and posting them online, she was just having fun being Tracy. But that quality about her that is so appealing made those videos take off. And they became larger and more popular until now she has 8.2 million followers. And she has book contracts for cookbooks, and she's opening up actual brick and mortar stores to sell muffins. And she does guest spots on the Today Show. And she has a lot of money. She's making a lot of money. She has a whole team, business managers, production facility, thing to generate these videos. But she isn't happy. And she isn't happy because she's never believed that what the cops or what the other investigator said, that Dad just walked away, because Dad wouldn't. He would not do that. And that's why she hires Elvis, because she has an emptiness in her, the emptiness of her father leaving. And that's why she goes to Elvis. And that's the launch of the book.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up her innocence and goodness after we had mentioned that Elvis has this moral compass that makes people trust him, because to me those qualities in them were complementary. She had this absence of a father, and he was a
Yes.
trustworthy somebody that could step into that role and help her in a sense. And they ended up forming a really nice bond and relationship through that mutual trust in each other. So, I mean, those roles were written really beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. Yeah, I absolutely think that's true. And, you know, Elvis feels as protective of Tracy as her father or her brother or her close friend. And she trusts him. And she trusts that even when he says hard and difficult things, that he will stand by what he says, and he will stand by her. And I think that's the underlying strength of Elvis Cole. I mean, I feature it in particular in this book because of the nature of the story and of what's happening in this book. But I think it's the core of all the books. You know, who Elvis is, his friendship with Joe Pike, because their entire friendship is based on a deep trust of each other, their loyalty toward each other. It's the same kind of loyalty that Elvis shows his clients, Elvis shows Tracy. It's who he is, and maybe that's why the books have become as popular as they are. I like to think people respond to that. I do as the writer, so maybe readers do too.
Robert, I want to ask you, you alluded to something that I thought was very interesting. You know, several of your characters are experiencing loneliness, you know, whether it's because of a career or prior service, maybe even PTSD or
Mm-hmm.
success. And Elvis Cole, especially in this book, seems to serve as a connection point for a lot of people. And I wanted to ask you about that because, you know, those human connections, I think we see that they're some of the first steps towards healing. But why does he, in this book in particular, serve as that connection point?
Well, in Elvis's history, which I bring out in this book, and I've brought out in other books, but it's specific to this book. Tracy's missing her father. Elvis never knew his father. His mother had mental issues, and she used to run off all the time, just disappear, and then she reappeared, and she was pregnant with Elvis, and Elvis was born, and she used to tell him, and he would always ask, "Who's my daddy?" And honestly, she may or may not have even known, but she used to tell him, well, he was a human cannonball in a traveling carnival. And he started running away early, and he would track down carnivals that had human cannonball acts in them because he was looking for his father, and he never found his father. But he used to meet detectives that his grandfather would always hire to find the runaway kid. And I think that's probably the seeds that led to Elvis ultimately becoming a private investigator himself, because of all the various detectives who used to find him and bring him home again. The fact that he never knew his father, never knew who his father was, knew nothing about his father, I think in a way that's part of the connection between Elvis and Tracy. And the difference, is he does point out at one point in the book, Elvis never had a father. He had a fantasy of a father. Tracy had an actual real father, and she adored him. Yeah. And he wants to help her make peace. I mean, they both know going in. Even Tracy knows when she hires Elvis. Listen, I know there's a bad ending here. I don't believe Daddy would just leave. So that means something, maybe he was murdered, maybe something bad happened, but I know he would come back if he could. Therefore, since he hasn't come back, he can't. But I need closure here. I want to know. And I think on a really, truly deep level, Elvis responds to that, and he wants to help her deal with that and move on, because she needs that before she can move on and become the person she wants to be.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like his calling is providing closure for others that he did not get and did not receive. So he, spends his life filling that void for himself.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That's what he does. He does that in the book, all the books. Mm-hmm. That's what the books are about in many ways. I don't write books about who stole the Maltese Falcon, so let's all find the jewel encrusted falcon. I mean, that's fine. Pardon me, but because I'm a humanist, and all the books I write are about the human condition and people dealing with loss or betrayal or something that's awful. And Elvis helps them close that door. And by closing that door also helps open a door to whatever's to come. And see, that's the kind of story I enjoy. I enjoy it as a reader, and I enjoy it as a writer. So I'm sure that's my ongoing theme.
It's funny you use the word humanist, because I made a note when I was reading that a running motif throughout was giving human characteristics to objects. Yet the food is keeping him company, and then ultimately the kill car was a character, and I have to ask about the kill car. It was one of the most intriguing aspects of the book to me. To me, its existence conveyed almost an all-encompassing, pervasive nature of crime, and it took the human involvement out of it. Right? He was acting almost independently. I only want to say the car was acting independently, and it almost served to absolve the driver of some accountability, or even give us a window into the driver's state of mind. Can you please, I guess, expound on the car's role in the book?
What you said. That,
Okay, so I was too on the nose. Got it.
no. I love it. I love this. See, the kill car as I present it through the bulk of the book uh, serves that purpose. You know, the driver is nameless. Someone is obviously steering the kill car, or else I'm writing a Stephen King novel. So there's a driver, but the driver has no identity except the kill car. And they are one. So if we think about what kind of driver would be one with the kill car, it's someone who has removed him or herself from reality and has manifested as this machine, this other thing. It's a way of, if not maybe on a deep level, absolving guilt, but I don't think absolving is the right word. I think it's simply a mechanism for removal and protecting him or herself.
Interesting.
The
I
kill
like that
car,
visual.
yeah, the kill car cruises like a listless shark endlessly. The kill car, take it as at its name. It's the vehicle by which murder is committed. But like a beast, it moves endlessly, it cruises, it's anonymous, it is an invisible car. By its nature, white Camry is the most common car in Southern California. There's more of them than any other car. Hence, if you wanted to blend into the surroundings like yet another tree in the forest, that's what you would drive. So yeah, there's some really there's some really deep psychological thinking here, Julia, and that's what it is. That's what's going on.
No, that
That's
was
pretty cool.
awesome. It just
Yeah.
it was so cool. And I was texting my mom while I was reading, and I was like, there's something going on in the background of this that I just can't wait to get to the end to figure this out. And you left me at a cliffhanger, so now I'm getting to follow up with that.
Okay. I'm glad you dug it, man. I mean, it's just that's good. That's why it's there, to be at the face of it. It's to be enjoyed.
Absolutely. It does. It entertains, it thrills. And I want to ask you one other question, though, because to me, it speaks to something that many of us have experienced in our lives. And that is this idea that we have a couple characters dealing with a very deep father wound.
Mhm.
And my goodness, there are so many people who carry this with them in their whole lives. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, because we see your characters being vulnerable, but we also see that deep woundedness.
Well, in this case, I assume you're talking about Tracy and Elvis.
Mhm.
Then yes, both were wounded. I mean, Elvis's father, honestly, he may not even know that he got some anonymous woman pregnant and that there was a baby. He's just some guy out there, is what I suspect is the case. Um, and Tracy's father, if it is unknown if he in fact did simply drive away, then he caused the wound. But if something happened to him, as Tracy wants to believe, even though she wants him home and happy and all that, but I think she's forced to believe something bad happened to him, then it still wasn't by his design. Yet both Elvis and Tracy have that emptiness in them. Yeah. And the personal task for Elvis is to fill the emptiness. He'll never fill it for him, but maybe he can fill it for Tracy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well done. And, the title of your book, of course, is going to mean different things to different people. But I really think you nailed it with this title. And I'm going to show that cover again because it's really good. Because, we all have a little bit of an empty somewhere in our heart. And for
Yes,
many of us, it's something that was inflicted by a father or father figure. So, so
absolutely.
again, right? So, and again, it goes back to your books are thrilling and entertaining, but also very provocative in terms of some of the things that we've got to ask ourselves as we're reading it.
I hope so. I mean, I hope so. I think there are a lot of issues and uh, developed in the book, and I hope it's a thought provoking book on many levels, um, and also about and how we care for each other.
Mhm.
Um, I like to think Elvis Cole's a representative of that. And if look, first and foremost, I want the book to entertain. I want people to not be able to stop turning pages. That's goal number one. But having said that, then uh, I want people to also think about the characters and feel the characters and vicariously experience what the characters are experiencing, because I think that gives way to understanding. And I think there's a lot of understanding to be had toward the end of the book.
Absolutely, especially of each other. Like their relationships and Joe Pike and his background and experience, it comes with a level of the people that interact with him have to understand. And, that adds a whole nother layer to those interactions.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
interesting.
One of my ongoing themes too is that people aren't necessarily what you see. That that everybody has a story. Everybody has deeper levels, and if you look beneath the surface, as you learn about people, the more understandable and relatable they become. Joe Pike might appear just this dangerous thug on the outside, but he has great depths.
Yeah.
And one of the joys for me is revealing those depths and teaching that lesson that he's more than he might seem. Uh, ditto all the characters. I mean, this kind of thing is fun for me as a writer. It's what I enjoy doing.
I also wanted to mention that while I was reading, I did not know much about your background going into this book, and I probably could have guessed that you had screenwritten at one point because it read like a almost like a TV show, like the dialogue and the back and forth and I don't know, the idea, the concept of your writing was almost exactly like a show. And that goes to the entertainment aspect for sure because I could visualize it so easily in my head. So that was awesome.
I write brain movies.
Oh, that's a good term.
Yeah, it's listen. You know what? We write it together. And this is what I think is special about books. The first 10, 12 years of my career was running TV for all the shows that I worked on. And I was fortunate. They were great shows, and I worked with really talented bosses, other writers, and I learned an enormous amount. But what makes books special to me is that now the medium is words on paper or words on a screen, which are dead. Uh, put the book on your shelf, it's simply paper on your shelf. It doesn't come to life until you read it. And when you read it, this is what I learned over time. You read the book, and Kristen reads the same book. You guys read the same book, but you're going to both, because you're bringing your own reality, your own experiences, your own personalities to those exact same words. Your Elvis Coles are going to be a little bit different, right? Kristen's going to have her own Elvis Cole. Julia's going to have her own Elvis Cole. And they're close enough so that you guys can talk about them, right? And know what you're talking about. But each Elvis is going to be a little bit different. So in that way, I've been able to actually collaborate with each one of you, which makes it special. And for all the people who've read the books, everybody has their own slightly different Elvis Cole, slightly different Joe Pike. Maybe those Pikes all wear sunglasses, but they're all just a little bit different and all are a little bit personal. And
Yeah.
that means I've reached out and I've been able to touch all these different people and collaborate with them. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's really what makes books special and unique and amazing. And that's why I do this instead of screenwrite or write TV or
Well, we're glad that you do.
Yeah.
And
And grateful for you to be here too, because we get to share in that and have that discussion.
absolutely.
I'm happy to be here. It's been a lot of fun.
Robert, before I tell our listeners how to get in touch with you, can you just maybe share what's on your plate next? Maybe just a little glimpse.
I am writing another Elvis Cole novel now. I won't tell you anything about. I never talk about them until they're finished. But I have an Elvis. The next Elvis Cole book is in the works. I'm also making a lot of notes on a new Joe Pike. Sometimes I write novels that are primarily from Joe Pike's point of view. And I have one of those kind of in the works. It's a little on the back burner now, but it's in play.
Awesome. Well, we cannot wait. And we hope that you come back on the show to talk about it. I want to tell our listeners, though, they can find you at your website, robertcrais.com. You have a fantastic website. You're on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, and you're very active on social media. So I know you interact and love your readers. But we are, oh my goodness, yes, we can see it. But thank you so much for coming on. And I want to show this wonderful cover one more time. And we wish you all the success in the world with this one. It is fantastic.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, guys.
Absolutely. Take care now, Robert.
You too.
Well, that
All
was
right.
a fantastic interview with Robert Crais. My gosh. You know, I loved how he described that relationship between the writer and the reader. And you're right, he creates a whole world that we can escape into because, you know, these are entertaining, these are thrilling. We are there, we're hooked, but we're also thinking. And you can see the depth of his thought about these characters and about these stories. And that's why this is an enduring characters.
Absolutely. I know, characters multiple. And I'm so curious now what a different book sounds like from Joe's point of view, because his personality in this one was very enigmatic, right? He's kind of this guy that Elvis clearly trusts and relies on and is best friends with, but we're not really sure, what there is more to him. So I'm so curious now, and I'm grateful that there's a litany of books that I have not read yet instead of waiting for the next. But this book was just full. There were so many themes that we didn't even really touch on. Some things that I was thinking about was, the concept of saboteurs, right? Like people
Yeah.
who are getting in the way of investigations, careers, success, and kind of stopping that. And all of these characters overcome those every chapter.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
just
that's so
really
true.
interesting. But yeah, I'm glad that we had the chance to sit down and talk, because we were talking about this book when we read it and when we were writing our questions, and now we get to have his side of things and his what experience he brought to the table as he was writing that.
It's pretty cool. I love what we
Thank
do.
you.
Well, I want to tell our listeners about some other authors that we have coming up that we know they will absolutely love. We've read these books already, they're phenomenal. We've got John Shannon with Boys Town, Jesse Rosen, All the Signs, Dr. Samra Zafar with Unconditional, Alex Hay, The Queen of Fives, Allison Raskin, Save the Date, Carter Wilson, Tell Me What You Did, Jill Shalvis, Better Than Friends, Mark Graney, Midnight Black, Marshall Karp, Don't Tell Me How to Die, Tess Gerritsen, The Summer Guess, Brian Freeman, writing for Robert Ludlum, The Born Vendetta, Robert Dugoni, Jeff Langholtz, and Chris Crabtree with Hold Strong, and Elka Joshi with 6 Days in Bombay. And listeners, you can find us on our social media. Julia's going to tell you where to go.
We're on bookstormpodcast.com. You can find us on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Apple, and everywhere you go, there should be a link tree that will lead us to where episodes are across the web. So we're on every platform. No matter what you use, we're there, and you can listen to all of the past episodes as well as all of the upcoming ones that Kristen just mentioned. So make sure to stay tuned.
I love it. Bookstorm Podcast. Just stay with us. Join us. We love having you here along with these fantastic authors.